Live with CDP, a weekly sports and entertainment podcast live on YouTube, Facebook Live, Twitter, and on audio via Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, and Anchor FM. Now here's your host, Chris Palme.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Live with CDP podcast, season 3, episode 55, 165th episode tonight. And I'm looking forward to my guest, Ben Grant. He's an accredited writer for the Toronto Argonauts, and he also does the X's and O's website about the Argonauts and has a podcast as well, talking Toronto Argonauts. So I'm looking forward to speaking to Ben tonight. I met him at the Tiger Cats Argos game on June 3rd here at Guelph at the Alumni Stadium. And it's going to be great to talk to Ben about the CFL and the Argonauts and what he thought of the game against Montreal on Thursday night at BMO Field. So just bear with me, guys, and I'm going to bring on Ben. And I really look forward to speaking to him. Just one moment, guys. I got so many graphics on here. And just one sec. Hey, Ben, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Chris. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm happy to be here.
Well, thank you for coming on. Hey, I got to get that helmet. I want that helmet. I love that helmet. That's the helmet they should have with the football. That's the 80s logo, 70s and 80s logo.
Yeah, this helmet I actually had made for me. It's really nicely done, but I love this logo. Like I like all the boat logos, but yeah,
Yes,
this one
that's
is my
one's.
favorite. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's
I
in the
I
display.
I I like what they have now, but I really like. I wish they'd darken the football. I really like. I said that logo. The one they got now is fine, but the one in the background, the A just never did nothing for me. I guess it's just because I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and that one, the helmet is what I know of the Argonauts of.
Yeah, no, I agree. And see, I like it because I don't know, I like the brown football, I guess. I think the argument is that brown isn't one of the team colors. And so you want it, I guess, in double blue. So I guess that's why they've gone with the look. I like the new boat helmet. I prefer the old one, but I'm happy they brought some sort of boat logo back. So it's
Yeah,
all good.
definitely. I was gonna say now everybody was happy they won the game Thursday, but it felt to me more like a loss because they just had an inability to put that Montreal Alouettes team away. And when you let a team hang around at the end of the game, you can easily lose the football game. And Colte missed that 21-yard kick, and Boris Didi had a kind of a rough game too. The 45-yard field goal wasn't a chip shot. It happens. But ones that are in the 20-yard range, 26, I was the wind or the breeze a factor in that game?
No, it wasn't really. It was a pretty nice night for football. It was super warm. There was a little bit of a wind, but it was straight away. It was coming from the north end, and it was it was really mild by BMO standards. So I don't think that was it. But we do hold BD to kind of an unrealistic standard because of how great he was last year. I caught myself doing it too. I referred to it a few times as rough game from BD. Uh, you know. He still had a pretty good game. He missed, like you said, a 45-yarder. That's not a gimme at all. And
No.
every kicker is going to miss one sometimes.
Yep.
Hopefully, it's not a 21-yarder as
Yep.
the time expires, like we saw with Montreal. But I think he's going to be okay. I'm not really worried about him. If it continues, then you got to monitor it. But again, going, what was he, 3 for 5 on field goals? That's
Yep.
it's still a good night. What now? You don't want to be kicking 5 field goals. That's the other problem. Let's get the Argos in the end zone so we don't have to worry about 5 different field goal attempts.
I was gonna say that's one of the issues I still notice with this team. They can move the ball at times, but they can't punch it in the end zone. And what I'm worried is they're gonna have the same thing as last year, where they're gonna let other teams hang in there. And field goals are okay, but at the end, you need touchdowns to win football games. And I'm hoping this offense in week 2 and week 3 will progressively. I'm not expecting them to score 30, 40 points a game, but I would say at least they need to score 24 to 27 a game. I
Yeah,
feel they should.
yeah, I'd be happy with those numbers. And the closer you get to 30, the better. But what worries me a little bit, and I'm usually an optimist, but it does worry me that the game against Montreal looked a lot like some of the games we saw last year, especially near the end of the season where they just got a little tight. We forget, one of the worst things about winning, and it's, you're winning, so you're happy. But one of the worst things about winning is that you sort of forget about the mistakes and the problems. And last year was easy to forget about a lot of the mistakes, especially at home, because the Argos had such a good home record. They won the East, finished first place in the East and in the regular season. And so it's easy to sort of shove some of these things aside. But there were some really close wins last year. The win at BMO against Hamilton, where Hamilton hit the upright on the last play of the game. They tied it
Yep.
up in the last play of the game, hit the upright. Toronto wins. That reminded me a little bit of a little bit of
Yep.
last week. And then you've also got the game against Hamilton in Hamilton. I think that was Thanksgiving, where BD hits a
Yep.
really long field goal. That was a bit of a miracle win. So again,
Yep.
last second, that could have. There were 3 or 4 games. BC is another one. They had 3 or 4 chances to win last year and couldn't kick a field goal to save their lives, and Toronto escaped with the victory. You can't keep doing that. That's not a successful program for success, and so or a recommended program for success. And at some point, it's going to catch up with them. Now, it caught up with them in the East final last year, and that's kind of what this game looked like too. So hopefully they can figure it out, but they haven't in a while. It's been 7 or 8 games now that they haven't really figured out a way to consistently get the ball in the end zone, and we need to see something from either it's Coach Dinwiddie or McLeod Bethel Thompson. It's on them to get the ball in the end zone, and hopefully we can see that
Yeah.
start this week against BC.
Well, you know what? I'll take a win because you know how many years back in the early 70s and 80s where they lost games where they should have won. What did they call it? The Argo bounce. So you know what? It's kind of the last year and a half has kind of gone in the Argos' favor. So, but I would like to see a little more consistency from the offense. I thought Andrew Harrison, his opening debut, was good. Speedy Banks, well, he's still new to the team, so it's going to take him time. I'm going to be honest. I'm still not sold on McLeod Bethel Thompson as a long-term solution for this franchise. Right now, obviously, he's number one, but I really think Chad Kelly at some point they got to find out what he has.
They do. Chad Kelly is special, and I think he will be special. I've kind of gone. Not really a 180. It's like 2 360s. I guess I've done on McLeod Bethel Thompson. I felt really unsure about him a few years back. Last year, I really jumped on board, and I've kind of gone back and forth. There's some things I love about his game. I absolutely love his toughness. I think he is the toughest player in the CFL. If
To
you
be
watch
honest,
the number
sorry,
of
go
hits
ahead.
he takes every week, he gets just pounded every week. Last week, he took 3 or 4 hits that would have knocked most people out of a game, and he just pops right back up, gets back in the huddle and keeps on going. And that you have to admire a player like that wants so much to win and is going to put everything he has into the game. And as a quarterback, leading by example, you absolutely want that. But that can't be all. There has to be some more, and that's where we do have some concerns, and the red zone is probably where we would start, right?
And I was gonna say, you might disagree with me on this. I call him a poor man version of Brett Favre, not just because he wears number 4, but he's got that gunslinger mentality. And you're right, he is a tough quarterback. He's physically tough in that, and he does have a good arm, but he does remind me of a poor man's version of Brett Favre.
I know what you're saying with that, and I think I agree with the sentiment in that Brett Favre made some questionable decisions. He had enough skill to have it work out a lot of the time, and you do see McLeod sometimes, make plays where you're like, come on, you know better than that, and he does know, and he's the first one to say, I absolutely love talking to him in post game press conferences. Probably my favorite player to talk to because he always gives it to you straight. He after the game last week, I asked him about the interception that he threw. Remember that first drive of the game? It was such a nice drive. They get down to the end
Yes,
zone and he throws an interception, and you're just like, wait, what was your thought process? And so I asked him that, and he was so furious with himself because he knew exactly what he did. He knew exactly what he should have done. He's gone through that 100 times. He even talked about pregame, knowing that this is something they were going to see, a look they were going to get, and it just it's just one of those things that happened. And but his commitment to get better is on par with anyone else. And I know he's a veteran, and we should see. My co-host on our podcast is always saying, we've got to see. It's time to see improvement. We got to see change, and we haven't. I agree, but I really do have faith in him. And I'm not saying that he's going to be a CFL Hall of Famer. I don't think so. But I do think he's a good enough quarterback to win the Grey Cup if the team supports him in every facet. And that's what we need is team wins, not him carrying the squad.
True. I totally agree with you there. My only concern is Andrew Harris, Hall of Famer, Brandon Banks, Hall of Famer, most likely. They're in their 30s, 33, 34. Do you think over this 18 game season they can stay healthy enough to play in like 14 to 15 games? Because I know Harris right now has a bit of a hamstring issue.
He does. I'm worried about that. And no, I don't think they can if they're used the way that they were used last week. Harris, especially. Running back in their 30s with a hamstring issue is a really bad sign. Now, they were smart with it. They took him out not when he was injured, but when he sort of felt it starting to tighten up a little bit, they pulled him. And, they've got other guys they can go to. They really like Adeboboye, the rookie. They know they've got someone pretty exciting in Javon Leake as well, who's kick returning, punt returning. He's a good running back, and they have the versatility to be able to put in another Canadian receiver, to put in an American at running back if they want Leake carrying the ball. So they did that a bunch too. And that from that standpoint, I'm not too worried about it if they manage him well. But it reminds me of like when Kawhi Leonard was a Toronto Raptor,
Yeah.
and we first heard the term load management. That's what you're going to have to do with some of these older guys, especially Harris. Banks, I think Banks is going to be okay. And especially they've got him lining up on the outside right now, which I know he doesn't like. But because of the injuries they've got to Eric Rogers, they moved Tavares Daniels inside. And now Banks is outside. He's never played outside in the CFL. He doesn't like it, but it does keep you a little bit more out of harm's way than running across the middle in front of linebackers and safeties. So I'm less worried about him. But yeah, with a running back, hamstring issues, over 30 years of age, and he's well past. I'm nervous. They've got to load manage. They have to be sensible, and they've got to get him out before it tightens up. And if this is a team that they feel needs to be a pound the ball sort of team, and they might be, this might be a very good running football team. It can't all be on Andrew Harris. It's got to be Adeboboye getting his carries, and maybe you activate Ouellet as well. We know Ouellet is a really durable running back. Maybe you have to go heavier at running back, lighter somewhere else, just so you can keep a fresh back on the field. I don't know.
Okay. Hey, I was gonna ask you also, Ben. Perfect weather that night. Obviously, BMO Field's a nice stadium. I really like it. I'm glad they're back on the X, but only 12,000 fans. I know they were noisy and they're loyal fans, but I really thought they should have had at least 20,000 minimum for that game Thursday night against Montreal.
I always think so. I love when that place gets crowded. Even when like I would even take the what was it 24,000 or whatever we had last year for the Eastern Final. And yes, half of them were Hamilton Tiger Cats fans. I'll still take that over 10,000, 12,000 Argos fans on their own. That football stadium, when it's packed, is a beautiful place to watch a football game. The environment's amazing. I would love if we had over 20,000 Argos fans in the stadium. I don't know the answer to that. It's not a new question. We've been asking this about the Argos for, well, I don't know, for a long time, as long as I can remember. We've been asking that question, I guess, almost since the Flutie days, I guess. But I don't know. I don't know how to fix that. Toronto's a weird city, and I know that a lot of people point the finger at MLSE and say there should be more marketing, there should be more advertising. I would love to see that, but I also don't believe that MLSE wants the team to fail. I think the reason you don't see a lot more advertising and marketing, I think, is probably that their determination is probably that I'm sure they've looked into it and they've decided that it doesn't make cost sense. That the people that are going to follow, that are going to come to the games, they know when the games are, they're aware of it, and they're already there. They must feel like it's not worth their while financially. Otherwise, I think I have to believe they would do it. Now, I think a lot of the fault, and it's hard to really blame a city, but the city of Toronto is weird. We do support some sports really well, but it's not even sport wide. We do support, like you like to say, well, we support hockey. Well, we support the Leafs. We're not
And
great
that's
at
it.
supporting. Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
like there's some amazing university hockey games. You've seen some of the incredible university hockey we have in Ontario. Most of those facilities are empty. We don't support hockey in Toronto. You've got great teams, and York University's fielded some fantastic teams. It's not full, and so we do support certain teams. We're not necessarily great if Americans aren't also supporting. And I've lived in Toronto almost my whole life. I love Toronto. I think it's an amazing city, but we do have an inferiority complex in a way. And if Torontonians believe that this is an entertainment event that Americans aren't interested in, then a lot of them won't be interested in it either. And so it takes Americans tuning in for a lot of Torontonians to want to tune in, to want to go. And so that's where you probably are going to need a big name player. And the truth is, the salary cap kind of prevents that. So I don't really have answers other than, scrap the salary cap and bring in the next Rocket Ishmael. People will come, but I don't think that's a long-term solution for the league. So I don't have an answer, but I'm with you. I'd love to see 20,000 at BMO.
I was gonna say, look at the Toronto Rock. They've been a successful National Lacrosse League team, and they moved to Hamilton, and their attendance is actually better in Hamilton. Could you see a day where the Argonauts actually leave Toronto and move to like Mississauga area, and have a stadium there? Or do you think, or do you don't think that's feasible at all? Like what the Rock did, moving to Hamilton.
I could see it happen. Like we might be looking at something like that happening when the World Cup comes to Toronto. I was just thinking about that last week. I was in the press box just sort of prepping for the game when the announcements were made, and Toronto was picked as one of the host cities. And suddenly everyone in that box is like, well, wait a second, when are these dates? When's this happening? 2026. It's probably going to require the Argos to be on the road, if not the entire season, a big chunk of it. We don't know the exact dates yet, or at least I don't know the exact dates yet. But maybe that's a year where through just circumstance we're going to find out how something like that would go. Like, where would they play in that season? I know it's 4 years down the road, but you got to start thinking about that. Do they play a season in Guelph, kind of like the Ticats did when the donut box was being built, or do they play do they renovate or play in Varsity Stadium, or Lamport's not really equipped for it. But I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Do you have to go somewhere else? Do you go to London? Um, and that might be a time to see. I think the league, the CFL needs Toronto, and I don't say that as an arrogant Torontonian. I am an arrogant Torontonian, but I don't say this as an arrogant Torontonian. I think the CFL needs Toronto because you need big cities in the league for the league to feel for the rest of the teams relevant and purposeful. And right now, I think most of the rest of the teams are quite content with Toronto, Montreal, BC, those big market teams in the league. Most of the rest of the teams, I think, are pretty happy with that setup because there's enough attention. Canadian-wide, there is attention on the league. If you start losing those major cities, I'm not sure what our TSN contract is going to look like. I'm not sure what the TV coverage, the radio coverage is going to look like. So you do need Toronto, but it doesn't necessarily need to be a stadium in Toronto. I would like it, but I could see something like that happening down the road, and maybe 2026 is the start of that.
Yeah.
Hopefully not.
Also, I know TSN's a great partner with the CFL, but I have some American friends on border cities, and you know what? It would be nice to them to do one game a week on CBC. Like like CFL was on CBC for many years, 50 plus years. I would be nice to see CBC and TSN come to some deal where they can put the odd game on CBC network as well to give the
I
league a little
think.
more exposure.
Oh yeah, I agree completely. It's not just that. I think the more networks involved, the more effort goes into promoting your brand, and the more cross promotion you have. Like i- if you watch Sportsnet, for example, when's the last time you saw anything Argos on Sportsnet? Even
Never,
right,
hardly
they
anything.
don't, and they will put highlights on in their sports desk or whatever they call it. I don't watch a lot of TV if it's not the actual game, but they will put highlight packages on. But they come 20 minutes into the program. You get all of your hockey scores, your baseball scores, your everything else they can throw at you,
Yeah.
darts, you name it. And now we'll get to our CFL updates. Every network, if they've got a little piece of this, I think not only tries harder and they put more effort in, because there's, TSN, they want ratings and stuff, but where's the motivation coming from to be the best? They're the only ones, they're the only option. And so I think TSN does a great job, but I think they'd be even better if someone was pushing them a little bit. So yeah, I'd love to see CBC. I'd like to see games on Sportsnet. I'd like to see games on multiple networks. Now we've got everybody promoting it. So now you've got people from Sportsnet and all their affiliates wanting to talk about the Argos. Plus, you've got TSN and their affiliates wanting to talk about the Argos. That's what you see in the States. You've got major networks. You've got Fox. You've got CBS. You've got ABC. They're all covering games. You've got is Amazon into it this year too? You've got
Yes.
these
Yeah.
streaming platforms.
Yeah.
So everybody is promoting your sport, your league. And who's promoting the CFL? TSN. That's it.
Yeah,
And
that's
again,
it.
I think they're great, but they're the only ones. Let's get for what you said and many reasons more. I would love to see more coverage, more broadcast partners for the CFL, but I'm just not sure the demand is there right now. So the league needs TSN, and so they're sort of going to dictate things at this time.
Okay, and I wanted to ask you this question too, Ben. How did you end up becoming an accredited writer for the Toronto Argonauts and analyst for the Canadian Football Perspective?
So it wasn't really my intention initially. I used to work in broadcasting a long time ago, but very briefly. My I'll give you the very short version of my story, but there were a lot of steps involved. I became interested into it in it when I was no longer able to play anymore, and combination of lack of skill and body breaking down, and I was at York University. The stadium announcer was Herbie Kuhn, who as the
Yep.
announcer for the Raptors, and Herbie, he's still involved with
Yep.
the Argos and the Raptors. Wonderful guy.
Yeah.
And he was leaving because he just got a job with this new basketball team called the Toronto Raptors. And so I was asked to come in and do stadium announcing, and I really got hooked on that. And so I ended up doing some radio play by play. And then once I graduated from York, I went to Humber College for radio broadcasting, thinking I wanted to do sports broadcasting, play by play. And I ended up getting a job doing music, sort of top 40, and worked in radio for a few years. I did get to cover the Argos to an extent, but it was really in a minimal way because, like we've talked about, not every station and network is interested in the Argos, and so I did get a little taste for it. But then I, moved around other careers, more things happened, ended up with all sorts of different jobs along the way. And a few years ago, I was just sitting around with a buddy of mine, JB, and we were just talking about how little coverage there was for the Argos and how we wanted to see more. And as we were just sort of sitting there throwing around ideas, we thought, well, why don't we do a podcast? Just be kind of fun, just a little hobby. And so we looked into it, started just kind of recording on our own. It was a really rough operation. Then we added a website to it and started writing some articles. And before we knew it, there was enough demand to bring a level of professionalism to it, and it sort of went from a hobby to something that, okay, well, let's do this for real. Let's get sponsorship. Let's actually run this. And then the Argos have been so great with us right from the beginning. And so when we approached them about getting accreditation and getting press box seats and practice passes, they've been wonderful throughout. So that's basically how we've arrived here, and now we're to the point where we're actually traveling. I'm going to BC this week for the Toronto BC game, which is wonderful to be able to have enough interest in what we're doing to cover expenses for stuff like that. I may be on a $100 flight, but still, I'll take it. Whatever gets me out to BC to cover the game.
That's awesome. And you know what? My road to this is a little different than yours because I'm almost 50. I'll be 50 next June. I got a taste of broadcasting a couple years ago, which led me to Rogers TV, which led me to creating my podcast. And the first 4 months, I couldn't get guys to come on my podcast. I kept getting better. And all of a sudden, I got one guy on, another guy on. And now, 2.5 years later, I've had 165 episodes with guests from every league, and the Toronto Argonauts have been really great with me too. Mike Hogan and Chris as well, and they've told me if I want to come down to games at BMO Field this summer, let Chris know, and he'll hook me up with a media pass. And now I've got the Buffalo Bisons doing this for me. I've had the OHL do it for me, the NBL of Canada. So everybody's been really supportive of what I'm trying to do. And Tony Ambrosio I had on too. He's a college professor. He teaches sports, and he's with TSN. He told me if I was younger, I would recommend school, but he goes, right now, you're doing everything I would teach you in a school. So I'm just trying to learn as much as I can and make contacts. And the Toronto Argonauts have been really great with me. And I just wish my late dad could see this because he was the reason why I became an Argos fan in the late 70s.
He'd be so proud of you. I love what you're doing. I think it's fantastic. I at first I think I was probably it was a few months ago where you first popped up on my radar. I was on Twitter and I saw some of your tweets and I was following along. I thought, who's this guy? This is kind of neat. And then we ran into each other. I first saw you actually at the Double Blue
Scr-
game, the scrimmage, and you were
Scrimmage.
interviewing Jim Barker. I was
Yeah.
like, this is awesome. And I sat there just listening to your interview because I thought, hey, I'm here anyway. I'll listen to the interview. And it was great. And I loved your questions. You knew what you were talking about. And I think the reason that what you do works and the reason that you're going to succeed and do well and continue to grow is because you're passionate about it, right? It's
Yes.
something you love. And I think ultimately if you're doing something you love, I used to say this all the time to my kids, like finding things that you enjoy doing. If you're passionate about something, it's so easy to get other people involved in it too. I can listen to someone talk passionately about anything as long as they really love it. I don't care
Yep.
what it is. This doesn't have to be a topic I care about, but
Yep.
if they're into it, if that's their thing, I'll sit there and listen to it all day because I love passion, and so that's what you bring. That's why what you're doing has grown so much over the last couple of years. I can't believe how many episodes you're in. That's awesome.
Well, yeah, and now I've got a couple of local businesses I'm hoping to sponsor my podcast too. I don't have the biggest audience yet, but it takes time and I just have to be patient as well. And like I said, I've made a lot of contacts with this, but you know what? I've also made a lot of new friendships with this too. It's just this has really changed my life, and this is something I really want to get into. And I know there's going to be some rejections and stuff like that, but these teams like the Argonauts, the Buffalo Bisons, the OHL teams, they're giving me opportunities and I just have to keep working at it. And one of my friends from Rogers gave me a microphone. So now when I do live interviews, I'll have a better audio with the microphone with my smartphone. So
Perfect. Yeah, the because equipment's expensive, and yeah, that's an investment when you're first getting things together. So yeah, that's beautiful that you got that already. So you're well on your way.
yeah, definitely. And I'm lucky to get guys like yourself and Mike Hogan's great and Sean Bowen's come on a couple times. Sean's one of the nicest guys because a couple years ago or a year ago when I asked him to come on, I'm like, he's Joe's son. He won't give me the time of day. And he came on and talked to me for over an hour. And he's a really good guy. And he shared some of his stories with me as well.
Yeah, those guys are fantastic. All the, like yeah, Hoagie's the best. Like Bowen's the best. They're so excited to come and talk Argos football, CFL football, and they know so much too. Like Hoagie's knowledge base is so impressive. Every time I talk to him, I learn like 10 or 20 things. And yeah, Bowen's just so passionate, and he'll give you his time, and he's so excited to talk Argos too. But all of those guys, and you mentioned Chris Belenovich too.
Yep.
There's so many
Yes.
people
Yep.
working with the Toronto Argonauts right now eh, that are just terrific human beings who love football, love the Argos, love what they do, love their job, and are excited to talk about it. And yeah, they just as they've helped me out, they've helped you out too. It's the same thing. These are just they're great guys.
Definitely, and like I said, one other question I wanted to ask you. I just have a few more questions.
No, please.
Keeping an eye on the time too. One thing I've learned about this podcast too, if my guests can talk for 2 hours, great. If they can only talk for half an hour, 15 minutes, so that's one thing I've learned too. This one I wanted to ask you, Ben, what were some of the positive and some of the negatives and some of the issues that the Argonauts need to address going forward? Obviously, it's still early in the season; it's only one game, but what did you like about their win, and what do you think they need to improve on for week 2 and going forward?
It's hard to tell right now because they're not healthy, and that's the biggest thing they've got to improve, and that's not something they can really control, but they have serious injury issues. It was amazing just to see last week going to the Montreal game, they had 13 guys on the injury report, I believe, and that's without having played a game. They had a bye in the first week. And so to come into the season fresh and you've got 13 guys on the injury report, that's not a good start. And this week it's even worse. They've got 19 guys on the injury list, and that doesn't even include the guys that are on the sixth game right now. So that doesn't include Eric Rogers, Juwan Brescison, Peter Nicastro, who are on the sixth game. Basically half the team is on the injury list, is how you look at it. And so it's really tough. So we saw some shaky play in the secondary last week, just a few busts here and there. They were good for the most part, but there were concerns. But it's not a skill question. It's a chemistry question. It's a amount of time. You had Caleb Holden was playing corner because they were down a few guys. They released, or they ended up trading away Jalen Collins. They were down Jamal Peters. He was injured. And then in the game, Robertson Daniel went down as well. So here you had Caleb Holden, who's a rookie. He was really supposed to be a halfback. Now suddenly he's playing corner next to Shaq Richardson. They don't have that kind of rapport. They haven't been playing together for years. So there were a few busts. So like things like that have happened all over the field with injuries. Like we talked about before with Brandon Banks. It's great to see him out there. He got a touchdown pass, but he's playing a position he doesn't know that well. And so that's going to affect him. And McLeod Bethel Thompson's dropping back to look. He's got Brandon Banks playing out of position. You've got Davaris Daniels playing out of position. He's in Eric Rogers' spot. Over on the other side, Markeith Ambles is entirely new to him. Cam Phillips, he played at least with last year, but he wasn't a starter. So really, it's only Curly Gittens Jr. That's his only guy. He's not even got the same running backs. So McLeod's got one guy in the same spot as last year to throw to. That impacts you. That throws off the rhythm. And it's like that across the entire team, because when you've got 19 guys injured or half the team injured, you just can't look like yourself. So it's hard for us to even tell what the Argos are right now. And it may be tough for us to tell for a few weeks, but it's not a good situation that they're in, because it can have cap ramifications. Some of the moves they made last year were the result of them basically running out of money, because if you've got guys on a 1-game injured list, they're still counting towards the cap, but you still have to bring another body in to play and to pay. So it's a situation that could get ugly if this continues.
I was gonna say, what's the deal with Maurice Cornell? Is he on the practice roster right now? Because I liked what he did in the scrimmage game and stuff like that.
Yeah, I thought he had a real chance at it, and the concern with the reason Maurice Carnell didn't make the final cutdowns, I think, is that ultimately what we got to see wasn't the same as what the coaching staff got to see. Remember, Maurice Carnell was on the Tiger Cats practice roster last season. He was on for pretty much the whole year, and the Ticats went through games where they were really short. They had Adeleke was out for a little while. They were missing. Um, I can't remember who they missed. Their field side was just decimated. They basically had all 3 guys out. And even with the injuries that they had, they still weren't bringing Maurice Carnell up. And so that was a little bit of a red flag where you said, well, what is it that Hamilton is worried about? And he looked so good for us in that double blue game. He was amazing. He was the best player on the field. But at that level, he's a great football player. Anyone to make a CFL roster is a great football player. There's no question. He's very talented. But there's a difference between really talented, just missing the practice squad, really talented making the practice squad, really talented being on the dress roster, and really talented being an all-star. These are really fine lines. And he's obviously missing a little bit of something, whatever that is, the consistency, because we saw him make those big plays. He had big interceptions. He looked great in that game. Wasn't quite as sharp against Ottawa in that second game. And I think they must have seen just week to week, it wasn't there every play. And we don't know what goes on in meetings. We don't get to see what happens every single day in practice. Maybe the consistency just wasn't there. And they had some guys that they loved, guys like Priester, guys like Holden, who they felt like, if we're going to go with Americans, we really like these guys in here. So that's what we've got. And you can't say they're wrong. Like Priester looked really good being thrown into the game last week. Holden, I know, had a bit of a rough game, but he was playing out of position. So, I think we've got to give them the benefit of the doubt on that.
Okay. Now, this question I wanted to ask you: how do you see this year's coaching staff? Obviously, Ryan Dinwiddie's back in his second year, and what do you think of the new defensive coordinator and line coach Corey Mace? And what are some of the players on D that could surprise Argos fans in 2022?
Okay, so we'll start with Coach Dinwiddie. I love Coach Dinwiddie as a head coach. I'm still evaluating him as an offensive coordinator. I don't really feel like I've got a true sense of who he is, because I think that he's had so many moving pieces. Last year, his offense was designed for Nick Arbuckle. It ended up being McLeod Bethel Thompson's team. So I think we kind of have to wipe a lot of that out. I think we can still take notes on it, but it's not necessarily a true reflection of what he was like as an offensive coordinator. But as a head coach, I've never question him. The way he manages practice, the intelligence level with which he approaches the players, the gameplay, everything about the game management, his own quest to improve himself. He admits mistakes, sees what he does wrong, goes to improve it, and he's not a guy that makes the same mistake twice. So love him as a head coach. As an offensive coordinator, we're going to have to see a little bit of movement this year, because we talked about the red zone issues. It's got to fall on him, and it's got to fall on MBT. And so between them, they have to work this out. And if that's something that they can't work out, if we're at the end of the year, if we're into November and we're still talking about the Argos can get to the 20, but they can't cash in touchdowns, then I think then he's going to have to take responsibility for that. Now, what does that mean at that point? Does that mean getting another offensive coordinator in for him? It's kind of an awkward scenario. I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. I'm hoping that's not an issue because I like his system. I like his brain a lot. I think that there's a really good chance this works itself out. He knows what they're not able to do. It's not like he's sitting there thinking, "Well, that was a great game. This went really well." He knows what the problems are. He knows how to fix them. We have to see him actually do it. Now, defensively, we only got a little taste of the defense last week. I really like Coach Mace. He's another guy. I love intelligence from coaches. That's big for me. From players too. Intelligence, I think, is one of the most important things in football. Coach Mace is super smart. I love his scheme that he had last week. I thought it was really interesting. It wasn't as adventurous as I was hoping for, but I think young coaches sometimes get a little nervous putting something new out there because they know everyone's watching them. It's their first game. His first game as a DC. He doesn't want to do something that no one's done before and have it blow up in his face. That's not a recipe for long-term success either. But I hope he gets more aggressive as we go forward. I'd like to see more sort of out of the box stuff. I've been begging for years to see, especially like this year and last year with the D line that Toronto Argonauts have. There's a potential to do some really different stuff that we saw like the Seattle Seahawks do a few years ago, where they had defensive linemen kind of like wandering, almost like stalking the line of scrimmage pre-snap. And offensive linemen can't tell what gaps they're in, don't know who's coming from where. It's sort of a zone blitz mentality, but it's with it's with the uncertainty of who you're even dealing with. Who are the D linemen? Where are they lining up? Who are the linebackers? Where are they lining up? Where are they coming from? This is the perfect staff to do that with. I know Coach Mace would love to do it. I want to see him. I want to see him find the courage to be able to do something like that. I want to see that so much in games. The rest of the D staff. This is a really talented positional coaching group. I love Coach Bell, Coach Fields. The DB coaches are terrific. Linebacker coaches, this is it's been a solid thing. And now to see Coach Mace taking over the D line, watching them at practice, there's so much more teaching this year, and that's something where the positional coaches have improved from last year. Last year, there were so many guys with former head coach experience, and they were wonderful system guys. At practice this year, there's a lot of teaching. It's instruction. It's helping out the young guys. It's veterans helping the new guys, but coaches helping them as well, staying behind, working on this, working on that. And that's I think one of the things I'm most excited about is to see how that translates on the field. But yeah, just to sum up your question, I'm sorry I went on forever on that one. It's an exciting staff. I'm very positive about it. I still want to see more from Coach Dinwiddie's offense, but we've got all the pieces in place.
Okay, just two quick questions I wanted to ask you. At the second one's not really a question, but this one I wanted to ask you: what are three keys to a win versus BC at BC Place, if that's what they still call it, this Saturday night at 10 o'clock on TSN? What are three keys to an Argos victory?
It's going to be a tough one. I'm worried. I'm nervous. I'm usually pretty optimistic. I don't feel great about this. There's just so many. It's the injuries. Ideally, this should be the perfect scenario for a Toronto Argonauts win. BC, everybody in the country is talking about the BC Lions, and they've for 2 weeks now because they were on a bye last week. All they've done is heard how great they are, read about how great they are. There's nothing worse for a team psychologically than hearing this again and again. So BC is like ripe for picking. Unfortunately, the Argos are coming off a situation that's sort of psychologically poor for them because they were lucky to get away with that win. I hope those Argos players this week have been able to reflect on the fact that really should have been a loss, that they were lucky to get away with it. And the work has got to be that much harder. Because I think if they play the way they did against Montreal, I don't think there's any way to beat BC. So we get to our three things. They absolutely have to have a pass rush to stop Rourke. Rourke's good. He looked great last week. I don't think he's going to look as good this week. I think you have film on him now. I think, Edmonton was really bad. They were starting two Argos that basically just got there a couple of days before the game, and they were starting. And so that shows you what the level of the defense was at. And so, yeah, Rourke looked good. Butler looked great. Whitehead did whatever he wanted. And the Argos, if they can get a pass rush, they disrupt almost all of that stuff. They put BC in a position where they don't feel comfortable running because they're playing from behind, hopefully. So that's, key number one, pass rush. Key number two, get ahead. That's big. They've got to score first. They've got to put pressure on BC. They've got to get a pass rush on Rourke. And I think the defensive secondary has got to find a way to shut down Burnham and Whitehead. It's stopping those two big play receivers. And if I can add in a fourth, if you'll let me, maybe a /3-4. Somebody new needs to stand up. I think that's a big key to this game. Somebody that we don't typically rely on has to stand up this week and do something that you would expect from a star, not from a guy that we haven't really heard of. So somebody, whoever that is it Priester? Is it going to be AJ Richardson? Maybe he's dressed this week, or Cam Phillips. Somebody has to come out of nowhere and be the Eric Rogers who's not there. Be the Harris who's banged up, or who Robertson Daniel who's probably not going to be out there. One of these guys that we haven't heard of has got to make a name for themselves this week. The timing is perfect for it, and the Argos desperately need it. If those things happen, we're in a good spot. And imagine how good this would be for the Argos to be 2-0. Hamilton's looking at a tough game this week, and they're already 0-2. They're in Winnipeg, and then Montreal. They're in tough with Saskatchewan coming to town. Saskatchewan might be the best team in the league. Montreal's 0-2. You could find the East with two other teams at 0-3 potentially. If the Argos can be 2-0, that is a tough chase, even this early in the year.
Okay. And just to wrap it up, I just wanted to talk to you about this quickly. 5 iconic players and 3 builders will join the Canadian Football Hall of Fame and Museum class of 2022. One player, Tim Tyndale. I know he had a great career with the Mustangs. He had a nice little cup of tea in the NFL, but I was shocked that he got put in the Canadian Football Hall of Fame. But I was going to say, I just wanted thoughts on obviously Ricky Ray, obviously being an Argonaut for the last 6 years of his career.
Yeah, Ricky Ray, he's awesome, and to see two Argos go in, because you got to put Dick Thornton in there too.
Yeah.
And he was before my time, but just reading about him, he sounds pretty amazing. We'll get to him in a second, but Ricky Ray's a no-brainer. He should have gone into the Hall of Fame twice, because he had a Hall of Fame career with Edmonton, and then he came to Toronto and had another Hall of Fame career. He's the passing leader in pretty much every single category for both Edmonton and Toronto. And I think he's the only player to ever do that. It's such an accomplishment. If he'd only played with Edmonton and then retired, I think he's a Hall of Famer. And if he'd only played with Toronto, same thing. So amazing. He was he was a star. He turned the Toronto Argonauts around when they kind of dive back down into those trouble years, and suddenly we made this sort of amazing, almost miraculous trade. And there's Ricky Ray being the leader in every single category a few years later. So absolutely deserving. I couldn't be happier for him. I think, great guy too. Everybody loves Ricky Ray. So absolutely should have been in. Glad to see he was first ballot. Now, Dick Thornton, the coolest thing about him, I was reading a bit about him. He's sort of from the Iron Man era of football, and he played pretty much every position. So he was a quarterback, and I guess he threw like 5 touchdown passes with the Argos, but he was also a defensive back, and a really good defensive back. That may have been his best position as defensive back. Played a little running back, played a little receiver. He pretty much did everything. And you can imagine, in this day and age, trying to find an athlete, people would balk at the idea of a starting quarterback doing anything else other than playing quarterback. Imagine doing all those other things. Like we see Trey Ford out in Edmonton, playing some receiver, moving him around because he's such an amazing athlete. Imagine putting him at quarterback, running back, receiver, DB. That's what we're talking about with a lot of those older guys. But yeah, I think it's the coolest thing to have Thornton go into the Hall of Fame too. So yeah, 2 more Argos. Awesome.
Definitely. Hey, I was going to say, I'm going to let you go because, Ben, it's almost 45 minutes, but I definitely would like to have you on again as a guest and maybe talk a little more about the Argonauts, actually go through their top 10 quarterbacks of all time, and maybe some top running backs and stuff like that, and talk generally how the team's doing in this 2022 season. But because I was going to say, I grew up with Conridge Holloway, and then obviously I saw Gilbert Renfro take over, and Danny Barrett, and then obviously Matt Dunnican. And then let's see, after Matt Dunnican, you had Flutie's 96, 97. Then you had Damian Allen. So I would like to maybe next time I have you on, talk about who are the top 5 greatest quarterbacks in Argonauts history.
I'd love to do that, and, yeah, you named a bunch of them right there, but yeah, no, the quarterback position's probably my favorite to watch, and I got into the Argos because of Conor Holloway, so
Yeah.
that's, something I would love to talk to you about. So yeah, next time, let's do top quarterbacks. We'll break it
Yeah.
all down, go through some, favorite players of all time. I'd love to do that with you, Chris.
Yeah, because Terry Greer, I love Mike Pinball Clements. Don't get me wrong, but Terry Greer is my all-time favorite Argonaut, and I would like to see more people wear his jersey at the games. Greer number 10.
I haven't seen a Greer jersey in a while, but I do love it's one of my favorite things about sitting in the press box is that you see everybody, you can see all the jerseys in front
Yeah,
of you, and that side of the stands is always packed. And I was looking at that last time I was there, as we were looking through it, sitting next to JB, we're going through, we're like, hey, look at that one. I haven't seen that in a long time. And yeah, to see some of these classic names, because it's so hard to get a CFL jersey these days because players just aren't with teams for that long.
long.
And so I always recommend going like classic because you can't go wrong with a Clemens jersey or a Holloway jersey or something like that. But yeah, I haven't seen a lot of Greers. I'll look out for them though.
Definitely. I'm going to let you go, but where can my audience follow you on social media and your website and podcast?
Absolutely. So you can follow me on Twitter at Ben_Grant. And most of my stuff you can find at xsandargos.com. And you can follow X's and Argos at X's and Argos. So that's where you can find all my stuff.
Okay, and when's your next podcast show coming up?
Well, we're gonna record pretty much as soon as we're done here, so that'll be
Okay.
out. That'll be out tomorrow. Most of our shows usually come out late Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning, and then we also do a post game reaction podcast. And you can find our podcast on anywhere you get your podcasts. And yeah, we always appreciate new listeners. So yeah, please join us. It's a perfect time to. The Argos look good.
Okay, and one guy I just had on here just said he's wearing his team classic jersey. He's wearing the Joe Curl number 55. So that's pretty cool too. So hey, I'm gonna let you go, Ben, but I was gonna say thank you so much for coming on season 3, episode 55 of Live with CDP podcast. And we'll definitely have you back again on as a guest. And I will download this to audio form in a few minutes and I'll send you a link of it. And I'll definitely tune into your podcast when it comes out, tonight or tomorrow morning then.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Chris. I've loved being on with you and happy to do it again anytime.
Thank you so much, Ben. Go Argos. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed my podcast tonight with Ben Grant. You can also check him out on Twitter again at Ben_Grant. And you can also check out his website at xsandolsargos.com. And you can also check out the Argonauts website, argonauts.ca or www.argonauts.ca. And you can also check out the CFL website at cfl.ca as well. So again, I want to say thank you to Ben for coming on and talking some Argonauts football. What I was going to say, guys, yeah, Argonauts' next game is this Saturday, June 25th at 10 o'clock Eastern on TSN against those BC Lions. So we'll see if the Argos can go 2-0. And also, guys, just before I get going, I'm just going to show you some highlights of that game between the Argonauts and Alouettes, courtesy of the Canadian Football League, courtesy of TSN, and courtesy of the Toronto Argonauts. And just bear with me, guys. We're going to show a little bit of highlights.
The Montreal Alouettes from BMO Field on the shores of Lake Ontario. So let's watch some CFL football and begin week 2 off the foot of Boris Beatty underway at BMO Field. And it comes down to the ex-Argo Worthy on the return. And he gets it up across the 25, about the 27, taken down there after a 15-yard return by Brandon Calvert. And just a short one now, about 17 yards for the first points of this game. Up and through it goes into the north end zone here at BMO Field. So instead of a turnover in Alouette ball, this one, a 43-yard try for the product of Laval. Cote hooks it in to tie the game. And the punter, notice it's not Boris Beatty. The punting duties this year, Australian John Haggerty. Went to Western Kentucky. Native of Sydney, Australia, to punt it away here at the end of this first quarter. Gets a good roll but doesn't get out of bounds what he wanted, so Worthy gets his hands on it, and that's heads into the end zone for another point for the Argos, who narrowly take the lead on that play. Just a low kick, trying to get it out of bounds before it goes in, but he can't again, so Worthy finally takes a knee and give the Argos another rouge and give the Alouettes the lead, if you can believe it, with under 4 minutes still halftime. And Cote does just that. And the Argos must be wondering, when they have certainly had the better of the play so far in this first half, moved over to Toronto last year. Up and through. First half, Boris Beatty, but 38 yards away. 3 more, making a 5-point lead for Ryan Dinwiddie and the Double Blue.
He's being recruited.
Wide open again. Speedy B. Brandon Banks breaks it in, and a touchdown. Toronto Argonauts. There's the debut 16 was looking for, coming down the QEW from Hamilton.
And you can see from the reactions, his new Double Blue teammates very happy for Speedy B to get that one in his first game with his new squad.
Another one who goes down as one of the great players in league history for some solid years, at least, with the Hamilton Tiger Cats, especially 2019, over 1,500 yards receiving. And before that, he was a great special teamer, great return man, and reinvented his career as a receiver back in 2017.
And McManus reaching around the blocker to get a hand on Harris as he stepped up towards the block.
Joseph Zima will spot the ball on the 18 for David Cote, who puts it through. 3 for 3. The product of Laval in his second year pumps it through. So it had been a 2-score game, down to the 1 score and a touchdown, 19-12. Dominic Davis is in to push it in, and a touchdown for the Montreal Alouettes. They drive right down, and they're now within 2 with a 2-point convert try coming up. Chris Schlugger, the celebration. 7 plays, 70 yards in just over 3 minutes.
Yeah, I've been impressed by this Montreal short yardage team as an aside. They are doing a great job moving the line of scrimmage every time out. Very consistent performance by them, extending drives, and in this case, putting points on the board.
Just a 2-point conversion away from a tie.
Well, looking for the end zone on a night where touchdown Jake Lenicky has been quiet. See if they look his way.
First time we've heard his name. And looking in for Winicky, but it is too high, too far. And it remains an Argo lead, but just barely hanging on by 2. And the Alouettes will fall to 0-2. And the Argos, the better team in the first half and through.
Anyways, guys, that clip was courtesy of the Canadian Football League, TSN, and the Toronto Argonauts. And the Argonauts take on BC this Saturday, June 25th at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 on the West Coast on TSN. We'll see if the Boatmen can go 2-0. So, also, guys, just to let you know, my next Live with CDP podcast, Season 4, Episode 1, will be Monday, June 27th. Time to be announced. My guest is Doug Plum, the 2022 NBLC Coach of the Year and 2022 NBL champion with the London Lightning. So we're going to talk to Doug about his career as a basketball player and then becoming an assistant coach and now becoming the head coach of the London Lightning since 2019 and getting his first championship as a head coach. He obviously had a championship with the Lightning as an assistant coach in, I think, 16 to 17 season. But we're going to talk to Doug about his career as a basketball player and transitioning from player into assistant coach to head coach, and talk to him about this return of the NBLC this year after the 2-year shutdown due to the pandemic, and the playoff series against the Windsor Express in the Kitchener-Waterloo Titans, and also some of Doug's charity work he does as well. And he's into physical fitness. He keeps himself in great shape and as well. So he's doing some fundraisers for Parkinson's out in British Columbia, where Doug is from. So I hope you guys can tune into my next podcast, Monday, June 27th. Just not sure of the time yet. When I find out from Doug, we'll let you guys know on social media, because I'm really looking forward to speaking to Doug about his career in basketball. Like I said, as a player and now as a coach, a head coach and a champion of the London Lightning team, who defeated the Kitchener-Waterloo Titans in 3 games. Also, guys, just some other news. The 2022 Kia Memorial Cup begins on Monday, June 20th, which was yesterday. St. John's beat Hamilton 5-3. And we'll see what happens with this series. Hamilton's next game, let's see. The Bulldogs take on Shawinigan on Thursday, June 23rd at 6 o'clock at TSN. Bulldogs lost their opening game to 5-3 to St. John's. So this is kind of a must-win for the Bulldogs. You don't want to start the tournament down 0-2. So to me, this is a huge game for the Bulldogs Thursday against Shawinigan as well. And also, guys, some NHL news. Austin Matthews won the Hart Trophy as the league's MVP. But more importantly, the Detroit Red Wings defenseman Mo Seider won the Calder Trophy as the NHL's top rookie defenseman and top rookie. Became the first Red Wing player the first Red Wing player to win this award since goalie Roger Crozier did in 64-65, and he's only the 6th Red Wing player to ever win the Calder Trophy. So congratulations to Mo Seider, and the Red Wings' future is bright with Mo Seider on D and Lucas Raymond as a forward. So we'll see what happens with the NHL draft coming up in July at the Bell Center in Montreal. Steve Yzerman needs to have another strong draft as well, and hopefully the Wings can get back to the playoffs next year as well. And the Stanley Cup Finals resume tomorrow night, Wednesday at 8 o'clock. The Avalanche lost 6-2 last night, so Colorado still leads the series 2-1, but Tampa Bay is right back in the series. And if they can win again tomorrow at home in Tampa, which is more than likely, I think the series will be 2-2. So I still think the series is going to go 7, and I still got Tampa Bay winning in 7. Don't ever count the champs out until they're beaten 4 times. So John Cooper's a hell of a coach, and Tampa Bay is a hell of a team. So, and let's see, guys, what else? What do I want to talk to you about? I've already, this weekend, thanks to Pat Malacaro, the Buffalo Bison's radio and TV play-by-play announcer, I will be down in Buffalo covering the Bison's St. Paul Saints series Friday night and Saturday night at Saline Field in Buffalo, thanks to Pat Malacaro and the Buffalo Bisons. Really look forward to it. I'm going to do a blog on my game night experience and about the Bisons, who are the AAA affiliate of the Toronto Blue Jays. And it's a great little drive, 2 hours to Buffalo, and it's only about 5 minutes from the Peace Bridge. And Saline Field is one of the nicest ballparks in the minor leagues anyway. So I'm looking forward to that as well. And also, guys, just to let you know, like I do this for all my podcast shows, Live with CDP podcast, the audio version is downloaded to Google Podcasts, Anchor FM, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, Spotify, Castbox, and LinkedIn. And I'm also working on some local businesses to hopefully sponsor my podcast, maybe by July and August. And that would be great too, to have some sponsors for my podcast. So I just finished season 3, episode 55. So 3 seasons completed now, 165 episodes. And I want to say thank you to Ben Grant again from the Toronto Argonauts for coming on. And also, guys, like I said, season 4, episode 1 is going to be next week with Doug Plum, as I always mentioned. And I just want to say again, thank you to everybody watching this live on my YouTube channel. Please hit the subscribe notification if you already haven't. I'm now up to 108 subscribers, but I'm going to keep building that up. My next goal is to get it up to 200 subscribers, hopefully. And thank you to everybody watching this on Facebook Live. My Facebook page, it's public for my podcasts. And also thank you to everyone watching this live on Twitter at Chris D. Palme. Please follow me there if you wish to. I'm at about 892 followers now, so very lucky. And I just hit 902 followers on TikTok. So, not speaking of TikTok, by the way, guys, you guys can follow me on TikTok at Live with CDP. That's at Live with CDP on TikTok. I do a lot of video content there as well. And a shout out to Crossbody Pro Wrestling out of Cambridge. Had a great time at the card Saturday night. And check out my pictures and videos on my social media pages and also on TikTok as well. I got to interview Laurel Cassidy D, and also the ladies champion for Crossbody Pro Wrestling, Crystal Moon. So please check out my interviews with them on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, and Facebook and Twitter. So I'm all over the place with that. Anyways, guys, I think that's pretty well it for tonight. By the way, I'll do this as well. A little plug to Are You Serious Tap and Grill on 130 Silver Creek Parkway North in Guelph, 519-766 0230, and they're the official pub of Bill's Mafia in Guelph, and really good food there, by the way. And they have a good beer selection as well, as if you like to drink beer. But it's a nice little pub, and they do love their Buffalo Bills, and it's a little official pub of Bill's Mafia in Guelph. So Are You Serious in Guelph? 519-766-0230. And like I said, definitely is a place I would check out. And that's about it, guys. Like I said, my next podcast is going to be next Monday, June 27th, to be announced time-wise. Guest again is going to be Doug Plum, the NBL Coach of the Year and NBL champion with the London Lightning. And I really look forward to speaking to Doug. So again, I want to say thank you to Ben Grant for coming on, talking CFL and Toronto Argonauts, and Rick Zamperin yesterday from CHML 900. I've been really lucky to get these amazing guests on my podcast the last 2 years. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to keep working hard, getting more guests on and keep improving it as well. So guys, that's pretty well it for tonight's podcast show. I hope everybody has a great night. And I will be in Brantford Wednesday night as a volunteer with Rogers TV doing some camera work. So if you guys tune into Rogers TV 20 Wednesday night at 8 o'clock, you'll see some of my camera work with Rogers TV as the Kitchener Panthers take on the Brantford Red Sox. Pardon me. The Kitchener Panthers take on the Brantford Red Sox, not the Boston Red Sox, Brantford Red Sox in Brantford tomorrow night at 8 o'clock first pitch. Looking forward to doing some camera work for Rogers and IBL Inter-County Baseball League as well. Brantford and Kitchener, 8 o'clock. Looking forward to that. And then Friday night, Saturday night, I will be doing some media work for the Buffalo Bisons, thanks to Pat Malacaro. So check out Pat Malacaro on Twitter and his social media pages as well. And you can check out the Bisons at bisons.com as well. And at AAA Baseball, it's just outstanding. So, all right, guys, that's about it. Again, thanks to Ben Grant for coming on. Thank you, everybody, for watching Live with CDP podcast tonight, Season 3, Episode 55. And Season 4 will begin next week on June 27th, Monday, June 27th, with Doug Plum, the head coach of the London Lightning. Have a great night, rest of the week, and we'll be in touch with you guys on social media in the next few days as well for more updates on my podcast. Have a great night, guys, and go Argos, and Boatmen. All right, take care, guys.